All right, so one of the bigger consequences of the War of 1812 was the opening up of new territory for settlement in what was formerly lands belonging to the Creek Nation. This included lands in what's now Alabama, along the Tennessee River, what's the Tennessee River Valley. This was extremely fertile ground, it's a very dark soil, very rich soil, very, very valuable soil, right? And what happens immediately after Jackson obtains this territory in 1814 in the Treaty of Fort Jackson is that he sends surveyors out there to assess the value of the land, right? And they say that this land is capable of producing, quote, in great abundance, every article needed for the sustenance of man and beast, end quote. This is good land. Get out there and get it. So Jackson is immediately encouraging squatters to go out there and claim their lands, right? Now, this is opposed by the federal government. James Madison had not authorized Jackson to take this land from the Creeks in the first place. And he certainly was not, yet ready to authorize settlers to move in there. He wanted the federal government to send in their own surveyors, assess the land as public lands, and sell it, right? But the federal government really can't keep up with the number of people that are moving into the territory, okay? And Madison's going to send soldiers in there to try to push people off the land and say, look, this isn't yours, you haven't bought it yet. This, if anything, belongs to the federal government. But there aren't enough soldiers here in this land, in America, in the aftermath of the War of 1812, to enforce this properly. So as soon as the soldiers push one family off the land, they have to leave and go push somebody else off another piece of land. The squatters come back and reclaim the land. There's no way to enforce Madison's opposition to the settlement of this new territory, okay? And Jackson, after his victory in New Orleans in 1815, he also immediately goes and invades Florida, gains territory there. So he's adding more territory to this new southern frontier. He also goes into negotiations with the Cherokee people and the Chickasaw people, Native American tribes, and gains even more territory next to the lands he had just gained from the Creek peoples. Okay, so he's adding additional territories here. And now he's got territory stretching from the Mississippi River Valley, the eastern side of the Mississippi River, through Alabama, and some very, very fertile lands here, all through this territory. And settlers are just rushing into Mississippi and Alabama, and these states are created as states very quickly, 1817 and 1819, respectively. Okay, and the migrants include all sorts of people: rich people, poor people, speculators who are looking to buy up a lot of land and sell it, squatters who are just looking to take any land that hasn't been claimed, of course, a lot of slaveholders bringing slaves, and many people who don't own slaves who are just looking to establish farms. You've got the great majority of the people coming into this area are from other southern states, so Georgia or Tennessee or the Carolinas. You don't typically get a lot of the more established people from the wealthier parts of the East coming in, okay? But from those southern states, you get a lot. You also get a lot of Scots-Irish coming in from Ireland, okay? Now, it's one of the most dramatic migrations in human history. Very seldom is so large an area of land settled so quickly. So Alabama, for instance, between 1810 and 1820, increases its population 12-fold because of all the people being brought in to the territory, okay? And there's lots of credit available for people to buy up land, right? Either from the federal government or from speculators. And the federal government is, of course, trying to impose a semblance of order, send in the surveyors, sell the lands at auction, so on and so forth. But people are very optimistic following the War of 1812, and they're giving out loans pretty freely to ambitious persons that want to establish farms in Alabama and Mississippi, okay? Now, as there's this like mad dash to grab as much land as possible, as quickly as possible, there's really no government infrastructure, right? And local government cannot be set up quickly enough to settle disputes among the settlers, right? And it becomes a very like violent place out here on the frontier in the deep south. And contemporary accounts they're talking about brawls and fist fights and shootouts and knife fights. And these are often the methods that are used to settle the disputes among the people that are moving in here to the new Southwest territories and states after 1817 and 1819. And of course, these settlers who are bringing slaves have to enforce, they're going to enforce discipline on the slave populations. And they use kind of a terror campaign by lynching or just hanging, without any kind of trial, those who they find guilty of disobedience or whatever. It's meant to instill fear into the rest of the slave population. They're going to use this also in some ways to enforce supremacy over Indians, and also as retribution against other white people that they are upset with for whatever reason, okay? So this new territory is being settled very quickly, and it's fairly a lawless society that's springing up in the early periods of the settlement here between 1815 and 1820, say.